Today, I want to tell you the story of my journey with a Spanish team by the name of UD Melilla. A Spanish team that are sort of in Africa. A similar story to Ceuta, Melilla is an autonomous city of Spain in North Africa, bordered by Morocco and facing the Mediterranean Sea. But anyway, let's save the geography lesson for later, because for me, this presented a very compelling FM challenge. Could we take UD Melilla to the very top using only African players? We begin our story in the fourth tier of Spanish football, in the Spanish Federation's second Group 5, alongside other teams such as Don Benito and Atletico Madrid's B team. And our goal to build an all-African squad, well, it has a long way to go because, well, every single player at the club is Spanish, well, except for Fran Núñez, who's from the Dominican Republic. Naturally, I started by releasing pretty much everybody at the club, although I was a little bit sad by the fact that I had to release Ali Alal, because that is a quite fantastic name. This though did free up some much needed wage budget, and I started to try and think about which players might want to join. I made trial offers for pretty much every African player that I could find, which did include Alex Song. He did though say no to us. Some though did say yes, including the highlights being Kalu Uche, this striker here who looks ridiculous for this level, despite being 39 years old. Makanjo, another striker at 33. And Big Abdul Bar at the back, 6'7" of pure defender. The plan was to go back to an old familiar of mine, the Spanner. 3 strikers straight through the middle, all-out attack tactic. Let's try and score some goals and get us up out of these leagues. So it turns out that releasing so many players may not have been the best call, as we actually head into the first game of our first season with just 16 first team players. We can't actually fill up our bench. Slight issue potentially, but the squad at least is taking on a slightly more African feel. We've brought in a mixture of some experienced older players and some young loanees. Should give us a really good chance in this league. In fact, in the season preview, we find ourselves as favourites to go up. Hopefully that, alongside our attacking outlook, will prevail and we won't regret not having enough players. And so our story truly begins. Away at Guadalajara in our first league match, and despite conceding first, an outlook, an attitude of we will score more goals than you was quickly established. Eventually, we ran out 4-2 winners, goals from Serrano, Segbefia, Miguel Garcia from the spot, and our star man up front, the 39-year-old striker Uche, with the final goal. And it was a pattern that well and truly continued. Goals from Uche and Makanjo specifically, firing us to a quite incredible first season at the club. Champions, 81 points was the points total, 98 goals scored, a 10-point cushion over second place Atletico Madrid B. It was a fantastic season. These players had done us proud. The Africans in the team, Uche, Makanjo, Niang in support in this 3-pronged attack, had done the business for us, scored us the goals we needed. But now it was time to go fully African. I suppose now's a good time in the story to explain how and why this is possible in Spain. You're probably asking the question, but how can you register African players to play in Spain? Surely they've got registration rules. Well, yes, they do have rules actually, but in La Liga in Spain, these nations are treated as EU. All African, Caribbean and Pacific group of states nations are treated as EU, and therefore you can register them as part of your squad. If we go to those African, Caribbean and Pacific group of states, scroll down, it's all of the African nations that you would expect. These are the nations that I'm choosing players to sign from, and these are the players that we're going to be including in our squads. Another important aspect to mention at this stage here is that players with dual nationalities or partial nationalities, such as Mamour Niang, who is listed as Spanish but has an other nationality as Senegalese, will also be included in this challenge. It just makes things a little bit more fun and I think a little bit more realistic too. And so fully African we did go. Plenty more players in through the door, including a former big name in Carlos Kamini. He used to be really good on Football Manager. Now, at 39 years old, he's going to be our backup goalkeeper. A couple of players I'm particularly interested in and feel like they're going to be big for us are Junior Romaric up front. Big Junior Romaric, 6'4" striker. He looks like goals to me. And also Cedric Teguia from Cameroon, another one who's going to play up front too. I think this guy's going to score plenty as well. It means that in our 5-2-3 spanner system, we are now fully African, even if we've not quite got a full complement. I did release all of those Spanish players, meaning, yeah, once again, we don't have enough players. I think, though, we're ready to go and attack the next league, which is this one, the Spanish Federation First Division A. Other teams in our league now include Real Madrid's B team and also teams like Oviedo and Deportivo La Coruña, who they used to be pretty good, didn't they? Somebody else that I did want to mention at this point, though, is Nuha Toure, who came through our youth intake, and he is actually African born. He's from the Gambia, 16 years old. He's got a load of potential. 6'6" centre-back as well. It feels like it's almost written for me, this. Keep an eye on him for the future. I'm hoping he's going to have a big future for us. And I should mention as well that some of the old favourites are very much still involved. Makanjo is one of our strikers, and Kalu Uche, now 40 years old, he's still on the bench. He's still in the squad. I hope he still scores some more goals as well. And score goals, he didn't, actually. He's just retired. He got 1 goal all of last season and swiftly became a scout that apparently doesn't have any eyes because he's not a very good scout at that. It's the end of the Kalu Uche story, but it's certainly not the end of the Melilla story because we are once again champions. We have won the league for the 2nd season in a row. 92 points this time. 120 goals scored. That is outrageous. Most of them from our star striker Makanjo, by the way. He is a goal scorer, this guy. 32 goals in 34 games. He is becoming a club legend already. These 2 seasons, really, really impressive. But back to that league table. Deportivo came 2nd. Real Madrid B came 3rd. Cordoba were the other team to get promoted. We are going to the Spanish 2nd Division. There's going to be some big teams that we're up against in this league here next year. And before we get there, we're going to need to do some reinforcing because, as you can see by this tactic screen here, there's quite a few gaps in this squad. That's because a lot of people have retired alongside Uche. Have also left the club. Kamini, Mere, Vieira, Maleko, Mohand, Seydou Sai, our first choice goalkeeper, has left the club. We are going to need to bring in some replacements. We're going to need to go back into that transfer market, but it's what I love to do best. We're of course going to find some more African players to come in as we go and now tackle the 2nd Division. Before we look at that though, I hear you also asking the question, but great, I've seen how you've done in the league now. What about the cup? I felt like I'd have to show you this cup game here. We got Granada in the Spanish Cup this year and we lost 7-4 in extra time. Truly bizarre. 4-4 after 90 minutes or so. It was, yeah, 4-4 after 90 minutes and then they scored 3 in extra time. Brilliant. Anyway, cup drama and league heroics behind us. It was time to go again, this time as we went up to the Segunda. Season 3 pre-season started with what I think is good news. We'd been taken over. Konstantinos Sakaris has successfully completed his takeover of Melilla, replacing former president Said Nchiri. You'd think maybe this will bring investment. We can spend some money on transfers. It's going to be great. And then you read his personal message when he joins. There are no plans to provide the club with any investment at this stage. Well, this feels like a waste of time, Konstantinos. Maybe we'll give him the benefit of the doubt for now, because it did give us a new contract, which we did sign. So that is definitely good news. If you're not moving forwards, then you're moving backwards, is something a wise man once said, and that felt particularly pertinent this year, because in the season odds for the Spanish 2nd Division, we were right down there in 21st, 300-1, just above Barcelona B, who had NA. I guess that's because they can't get promoted, right? Espanyol, though, huge favourites to go back to La Liga.
To counter this, we of course made signings, 6 of them in through the door. Mohamed Ben Ali the first, a really good looking right back, 29. Good looking is he's a good player. I mean, you know what I mean, right? I mean, he's lovely looking, but he's a good right back. Ifiana Emanuela backup goalkeeper. Mamadou Sai replacing the old goalkeeper, Seydou Sai, in net. Joseph Adjei, a fantastic centre-back. Clinton Mola on a free, another centre-back. And finally, perhaps the piece de resistance, Lambert Arena, costing us a cool 2.5k from Karbala in Iraq. What a find this guy was, looking capable of tearing up La Liga 2. The squad in the spanner looked like this. Once again, not enough players to make up a full complement, and perhaps noticeable by its absences. At this point here, we need to pay our respects. Goodbye, Benjamin Makanjo. He's with the Angles now. Send him one up, Benjamin. He's not dead, but he has left the club on a free. What a player he was for us. 29 goals last year, 21 in the first season. We will remember you, Benjamin. Again, he's not dead. He's just left. He's a free agent. Another of our new signings after a successful trial period was this guy, Musa, and he got off to a fantastic start, scoring both goals in an opening day 2-0 win away at Cordoba. We followed this up with a 1-0 win against FC Andorra, with Romaric getting the goal, and 2 wins from 2 in La Liga 2. It felt like we were on the charge a little bit. We were then, though, swiftly brought down to earth with a 1-0 loss to Malaga. Perhaps this would be the pattern for this season. We were definitely capable of beating teams, but at the same time, there were surely teams stronger than us in the division. As we moved through our 3rd season into January, it was becoming clear that actually, maybe we were in with a chance of promotion here. We sat 6th, just 5 points off the team in 2nd, Leganés, and I was starting to believe. Our new hero, the Silver Fox Lambert Arena, was a constant source of goals up front. And as always, big Abdul Bar at the back was a real threat from set pieces, scoring plenty of headers, especially from corner kicks. And I was right to be optimistic, because after a fantastic second half of the season, we ended up finishing second in the league and promoted automatically to La Liga. We were going to the big time already. Espanyol won the league comfortably on 102 points, but just behind them, or should I say quite a long way behind them, was us. 76 points, 22 wins from our 42 games. Our team of Africans had taken us to the promised land of La Liga. Lambert Arena had scored 17 goals, 15 from Cedric Teguia, and just the small contribution of 19 headers from Big Abdul Bar at the back. The big dog was a real beast in the air. Promotion then brought about the biggest transfer budget we'd seen so far in the save, but at 9.5 million, it wasn't exactly one to compete with the bigger teams in La Liga. We were going to have to be smart, we were going to have to scour the world for African talent, but this was a club that was well and truly on the up. And so, after a summer of bargain hunting, I was feeling pretty confident going into our first La Liga season. I was impressed by some of the players we managed to bring in, the highlights being a big striker by the name of Didier Lamkel Z. Big Z is what we're going to call him from here on in. Liga, a young 6'3", 18-year-old centre-back with a lot of potential, and an experienced midfielder in Jean-Daniel Akpa. He's been about the place, he's played at the top level before, it was good to bring him in. But perhaps, after spending around about £2 million, the highlight of the summer and an early transfer was the signing of Aya Fati. 18 years old, dual nationality, Portuguese international player at under 20 level, but born in Guinea-Bissau. He would lead our line this year, and immediately after signing, his value jumped up to 28 million to 34 million pounds. At the very least, we might be able to make some money off him in the future. The confidence that I spoke of, though, did take a little bit of a hit when I realised our first game of the season was up against none other than Barcelona. Nevertheless, we weren't going to compromise on our morals, and we'd head into the match still playing our familiar 5-2-3 spanner formation. We were going to have a go this year. We were going to attack teams, and that wouldn't change even against the big clubs. Yeah, all right, perhaps it should have done. We lost 6-1 in the opening game of the season. We were 4-0 down inside 17 minutes. Goals from Christensen, Gavi, Dembele, Rafinha. Uncle Z, Big Z did get a goal on his debut, but then Pedri and Lewandowski scored a couple more. 6-1 opening day loss at home, not ideal. But perhaps this is what we should have expected. We were, after all, predicted to finish rock bottom of the league, and after losing our first 3 games, we finally got ourselves a win when we beat Vallecano 2-1. Goals from Aya Fati and Badu and Ndiaye were enough to give us a 2-1 win. We were finally off the mark. And yes, those wins were few and far between, but in some matches, our attacking style was definitely giving teams a run for their money. For example, we lost 6-4 to Real Madrid in a bonkers game of football, but 6-4 against Real Madrid, I feel like we'd done ourselves proud. At the start of January, we sat 15th, above the relegation zone, and I was pretty happy with how things were going. We'd won 7 of our first 19 matches, and we lost the other 12. There was no draws for us. It was very much we were going to win or we were going to get beaten pretty comprehensively. 7 points was the gap to the relegation zone, and I was confident we could survive. And after all, that was the #1 priority in our first season. And survive is exactly what we did. We'd actually finished at the dizzy height of 12th. 47 points was the points total, well clear of that relegation zone. Valladolid, Vallecano and Elche were the teams to go down. 12th place is outrageous in our first season. It's because we'd actually scored the 3rd most goals in the entire league. I guess we should probably ignore the fact that we conceded by far the most with 85, but a comfortable first season in La Liga. And again, from here, the only way was up. This incredible result was in no small part down to our fantastic front 3. Aya Fati had come in and been a superstar from minute 1 at 24 goals in the league from him in 37 starts. Didier Lamkelzy, or Big Z as we call him, got 11. But perhaps most impressively, 20 goals from Lambert Arena. Lambert Arena, who had been with us now for 2 seasons and was picked up for just £2,500 from a team in Iraq. What a signing, what a season, what a man, and what a journey we are on. We'd once again been given a pretty modest transfer budget, but already perhaps the most impressive bit of business had been done. A youngster by the name of Aimé Diallo was on his way into the club, 18 years old, Ivory Coast centre-back, and a player that I already had super high hopes for. And so with this foothold in La Liga, we headed into our 5th season at the club with plenty to build on. Due to not being able to compete financially with the bigger teams in La Liga, a bit of a tactic was employed at this stage to try and invest in youth players. We spent a little bit of money, around about £7-8 million before the season ticked over, investing in some youth players. Aimé Diallo completed his move to the club, the 18-year-old, so much potential with him. James Agbo is a goalkeeper that looks quite promising. And Kayalethu Jakalash of South Africa was a really promising looking striker, just 18 years old. Now, as any good football manager knows, if you're going to sign a lot of youth players, you should mix it in with a little bit of experience. And of course, this was part of my plan as well. Kenneth Omareu came in at 32, experienced centre-back. Abdul Medouib was another one of these, as well as Lassou Koulibaly and Sekou Koita. Now, it shouldn't come as any surprise that once again we were going to go with the 5-2-3 spanner. It scored so many last season, there was no reason to change. Hopefully, though, with this investment in youth, we'd be able to stay up and then continue to improve. And over the course of the next half a season, the main storyline was the development of Aya Fati. The young striker was developing at an incredible rate of knots, and his 8 goals combined with goals from Big Z and Sekou Koita in attack had led us to 7th place in January. We were just outside the European places and so far clear of relegation that it was actually laughable. It should be mentioned too that despite not always starting, Lambert Arena was still contributing massively and found himself with the 3rd highest average rating in the league. We were either being battered, like this 6-3 loss to Real Madrid, another brilliant game against them by the way, or we were battering teams ourselves, like this 5-0 win against Racing Santander. An unlikely finish in the European places was on the cards. We couldn't. Could we? No, we couldn't. But we had managed to finish 8th
It was an incredible season, just outside those European places. 2 points off Villarreal, who finished in 6th. We were going from strength to strength, and all that could stop us now was if we were to lose any of our big players. And unfortunately, that's exactly what happened. Begrudgingly, we couldn't say no to a £40 million bid for star striker Aya Fati. His time at the club was short-lived, but sensational. The big question now was, could we reinvest that money and go again next year and improve by making some big signings? And as you might expect, spend big is exactly what I did. We used some future installments and future clauses to spend £44.5 million. We spent biggest in attack. Emmanuel Afolabi joined from Nottingham Forest for just about £20 million, a 19-year-old Nigerian wonderkid striker, firmly establishing ourselves as La Liga quality. He'd be joined in attack by Victor Boniface, who joined from Union SG in Belgium. That was about £12.5 million. And then finally, some smaller transfer fees, but still some quality players joined. Angelo Fulgini in midfield, an Ivorian. Sena Miangwe, a left back. And
Easy way,
who joined at right back. We also signed a player whose actual name was Rivaldo, a South African centre-back, and an experienced defender in Hassan Kamara joining from Mallorca. The final signing was a loan signing from FC Porto, the team to which we'd sold Aya Fati, and Victor Charles looked like a real prospect at centre-back. We did also sell a couple of players. Sekou Koita left for Watford for £2.8 million, which did represent a little bit of a profit, and Lassou Koulibaly moved to Denmark. And it was at this point that we made our first real tactical change. A move away from the 5-2-3 spanner and a move towards the 5-3-2 turtle. Taking one of our strikers away and dropping them into defensive midfielder as an anchor. The plan being to become a little bit more defensively savvy and establish ourselves further in the league. Yes, we'd scored a lot of goals in our time at the club, but we'd also definitely conceded a lot as well. If we could reduce that number, maybe just maybe this year, we could aim for Europe. And as we headed into January, that dream became more and more of a reality. On January the 22nd, we found ourselves sitting 4th in the league, in the Champions League places no less. And the biggest hero of the season so far was an unlikely one. Kaethalu Jakalash, originally signed to be on the bench at just 18 years old, signing from a team in South Africa, had become a starting striker and had swiftly scored 15 goals in just 13 starts. And we were a team not to be messed with. We were dispatching teams like Levante 5-0. In fact, the only times we really dropped points is when we were playing the big two, Real Madrid or Barcelona. Home games against teams below us in the league were pretty comfortable affairs. Take this game here against Almeria, a team I'm all too familiar with, as we beat them 4-1. Efalabi, Boniface,
easy way,
and Jakalash with the goals. In fact, at the mention of Almeria, I should now say that we're actually playing in Almeria. We'd had a stadium move across the Mediterranean Sea, across from Africa, now playing in southern Spain. Again, in Almeria. The coincidence isn't lost on me. And of course, I should also mention that we'd gone back to the spanner. The turtle shape with the DM lasted about 4 matches before I reverted back to our old trusted formation. We'd also managed to pull off another amazing acquisition in the transfer market towards the end of the window. Francis Friday Eze had joined on a free transfer, and despite not yet making his debut for the club, he looked like a real prospect and already had a massive price tag. The plan was simple. Keep playing our 5-2-3 spanner, keep scoring goals, keep us in the European places. Simple, right? And it was. An incredible 3rd place finish, 75 points accrued, just below Betis, and Madrid winning the league with 95. Victor Boniface was the league's top goal scorer with 26, and just behind him in 3rd was Jakalash with 21. The team was continuing to go from strength to strength, and now with Champions League football secured, we continued to get decent budgets and we could continue to invest. Although with a budget of just £16 million for the coming summer, perhaps now wasn't the time to break the bank. Perhaps we could save that until after we'd got the Champions League money. The results in the second half of the season, though, were excellent. There were some big wins in there, wins such as a 4-1 against Getafe, and only a handful of losses, again losing to Real Madrid, who frustratingly did have a squad that was just out of our league. The question now was, would Champions League football start to attract the bigger names of African football? Could we bring to the club some real superstars? Another fascinating window was ahead of us. But just by being in the Champions League, it led me to start to dream. Perhaps one day this team of African players could go on to win the whole thing. For now though, it was just the start of our European journey. And so, with a new season, of course more signings came through the door. £48.5 million spent, relatively tame for a Champions League side. The biggest signings being Patrick Pfeiffer, who would come in to play at centre-back, Amare Traore, who would come in as a right-back, and Yossi Farag, another centre-back. Papi Cisse, Abdou Conte and Jonas Nkosi would also join the club, and the finances were boosted by a big sale of Morné Saboni, signed for just £15,000 a couple of seasons ago, but sold to Arsenal for £11 million. Heading into the new season, the squad looked like this. James Agbo would continue to be the goalkeeper, although this was an area that probably needed upgrading soon. Diallo, Pfeiffer, Cisse at the back, Traore at right wing back, Federa at left wing back, Obwane and Fulgini in the middle playing as Segundo Volantes. And then the strike force, probably the piece de resistance of this side. Afolabi on the left-hand side, Jacalash on the right-hand side. And then last season's league top goal scorer, Victor Boniface through the middle. The season preview still had us down in 14th place, but we knew we could outperform this. And it started perfectly. Winning our first 3 matches of the season. A 2-0 win against Mallorca, goals from Arem and Federa from a free kick. Followed up by a 1-0 win against Almeria, Farag with a big header. And then after that, perhaps most impressively, a 2-0 win against Atletico Madrid. Fulgini from the spot, followed up just after half-time by a nice little finish from Jacalash. And then we didn't stop there, although it did include some pretty poor runs, like this run between September and October. As we moved through into February, we found ourselves sitting 5th in the league, just outside those Champions League places. But perhaps most pleasingly, we'd made it through in the Champions League. Yeah, we kind of did it by the skin of our teeth. In fact, it came down to the final league stage game, and we won it 5-0 against Lazio. Afolabi scoring the pick of the goals with this lovely little finish on his left foot. We'd go on to draw Juventus in the next round of the Champions League, the playoff round, and at this stage, anything on top of this felt like a bonus to me. But of course, we'd give it our all and see just how far we could go. It's worth noting as well at this stage that club legend Lambert Arena's game time was beginning to become a little bit limited, and perhaps his time at the club was coming to an end. Still though, perhaps the best 2.5k ever spent. Fast forward to Champions League final day 2029, and did we make it? No, of course we didn't. We actually did though, dispatch of Juventus 4-1 on aggregate. A 3-1 win in the second leg being the highlight, with goals from Afolabi with a lovely dink, Arem grabbing the second, and the main man Victor Boniface smashing home a well-worked third. However, that is where our Champions League run ended. We were massively humbled by Liverpool in the round of 16, a 6-0 aggregate score as they just kept on scoring. We'd enjoyed our first taste of Champions League football though, and happily, we'd be able to do it all over again next season, because in the league, it was another great season. 75 points this time, finishing 3rd. Again, Real Madrid just completely running away with the title with 88 points. But we were becoming established as one of the better teams in La Liga at this stage, and we could once again try to strengthen in the transfer window, although the transfer budget was a little bit limiting at just £11.37 million. But you know me, I love a challenge, and at this stage, I felt like we were getting closer. Getting closer to that league title, or even better, a Champions League win. The Season 8 transfer window started with wage budgets needing to be freed up and a transfer budget needing to be boosted. We said goodbye to club legend Lambert Arena. Bought in, and I'll say it again, for just £2,500 from Iraq, we sold him to Trabzonspor for 825k. He leaves after playing 133 games and scoring 51 goals for us. We also said goodbye to another star striker. Victor Boniface departed for Ajax in a deal worth about £10.5 million. Another one that scored plenty for us, 41 goals in 61 games, and on fairly big wages, and at turning 28, it felt like the right time for us to let him leave. And that was mainly because we had big plans already to replace him. Because this summer we spent big. £61 million spent in total, a large proportion of that on João Santos signing from Vitória in Portugal. £34.5 million up front for an 18-year-old Portuguese and of course Cape Verdean striker. His value was sky high, and it already felt like, despite only just signing, it wouldn't take long for the biggest clubs in world football to come knocking. We also invested about £25 million in the duo Modou Tambado to play centre-back. He joined from Club Bruges, and Yanis Hamash, a new left-back who, importantly, had really good free kick taking, something we'd be looking to utilise. And so with another successful window behind us, the squad looked like this. Agbo still kept goal, we couldn't find anybody to replace him. Diallo, Tambado and Pfeiffer at the back. Traore on one wing-back side and Hamash on the other with those free kicks ready to be taken. It was Hobwane and Farag in the middle, and the strike force now looked a little bit different. Jakalash on the right, Afalabi on the left, and the new star Santos through the middle. The aim this year, could we win the league? And could we go even further in the Champions League? Alongside this, there was also some other exciting news. We were due to move into a new stadium, the 29,250 capacity Melilla Stadium, next season. Would we be able to christen the new stadium with a league title, or even better, a Champions League win? And if you had to guess how our league campaign went, then you'd probably be correct. We finished second to Real Madrid. Again, Real Madrid are just proving so difficult to overcome in the league, and they finished with 90 points this year. A good season, a great season almost even, with 76 points for us. But it was elsewhere this year that we really did start to make our mark. First of all, we won our first piece of silverware. Spanish Cup champions, the Copa del Rey, was brought back to Melilla with a 2-1 win against Levante. Goals from Mayeni with a header from a corner, and then Afalabi after a cross by Santos was deflected into his path. That was enough to give us the crown, our first major trophy, at least in terms of cup silverware, not counting those league titles we'd won in the leagues below. And if you think that cup run was impressive, it was perhaps dwarfed by our run in the Champions League this year. We comfortably navigated our way through the league phase, finishing 7th, and then knockout victories against Villarreal and Bayern Munich set up a semi-final showdown against PSG. Optimism levels went through the roof as we secured a 1-0 win in the first leg from this Pfeiffer header, but that balloon was well and truly popped as we succumbed to a 5-1 loss in the away leg. Yeah, PSG are good, and beating them in the Champions League is difficult. Regardless of this, though, it was another step forward. This season was proving to me that this wasn't an impossible task. And with the development of some of these new gens, notably I made Diallo in defence and Jakalash and Santos in attack, I felt like maybe, just maybe, we were just one season away. And with us now settled into our new stadium, back in Melilla and back on the African continent, perhaps now was the time to go and win it all. And for this 9th season, our season where we were going to well and truly go for glory, the transfer signings were few and far between. 2 loan signings came through the door, and then a big money signing of Jordan Kololo, a central midfielder bought for £25 million. He would form a new midfield partnership with a loan signing, Jonathan Bousquet. Bousquet was an under-21 French international, but did have partial Senegalese nationality. This new midfield partnership would be a slight tweak to the 5-2-3 spanner. Instead of dual Segunda Volantes, we'd now be rocking a Regista to the left-hand side. Perhaps this tweak would be exactly what we needed to create those chances and get a little bit closer to Real Madrid. And our performances in the first half of the season suggested that this might just be right. A 4-0 dismantling of Barcelona being the real highlight, as we took them to the cleaners with goals from Santos, a second from Santos with a tap-in, Friday Eze running through a very open Barcelona defence for a third, and the 4-0 win being sealed by Traore in the 75th minute. This went a long way to show just how good we were at this point. And with 27 games played, we were in with a very slight chance of catching Real Madrid at the top, because once again, they were just really, really good. It was a 6-point gap, and I was certainly not ruling out a title race, but at this stage, perhaps the focus turned towards the Champions League.
The league phase this year was by far our most successful, and we went through in second place just behind PSG. With results at this stage, including a particularly impressive 4-1 victory away at Newcastle. This Newcastle team looks strong, and goals from Diallo, Santos, Jacalash, and a second from Diallo once again proved our credentials. I was feeling confident. I felt good about this Champions League run, and we'd drawn Aston Villa in the round of 16, a tie that I was pretty confident of winning. And we did win it. Goals from Diallo, Jacalash, and then finally Afalabi gave us a 3-1 win back in Melilla after drawing 0-0 at Villa Park. We were going through to the quarterfinals. And it was Newcastle in the quarterfinals. After dispatching them comprehensively in the league phase of the competition, we need to play them in the knockouts now. And after an entertaining first leg, beating them 3-2 in Melilla, we'd need to back this up with a result in Newcastle. And after goals from Jacalash, and then finally late on from Friday Eze, we secured ourselves a 2-0 win away from home and a 5-2 victory on aggregate. We were once again going to the semi-finals. And now at this stage, I should also explain to you that results in the league were going brilliantly. After beating Barcelona 4-0, we actually continued to stay unbeaten up until the very last game of the season. We'd beaten Elche 4-0, we'd beaten Osasuna 5-0, we'd beaten Espanyol 3-2. And it meant that against all odds, we'd climbed above Real Madrid in the league, joint on points with them, but with a slightly better head-to-head, 78 points. Going into the final game of the season, we had the chance to win the title, but the narrative didn't stop there. The final game of the season was against Real Madrid, away at the Bernabeu. If this squad of African players could make their way past Inter Milan in the Champions League semi-final, we could set up the ultimate two-game showdown at the end of our 9th season. A Champions League final and a league decider against Real Madrid. And well, we did exactly that. We raced into a 4-0 lead in the first leg against Inter Milan in this semi-final. N'Kolo with the first goal and the second goal after some excellent work down the right-hand side from Jacalash. He managed to get the ball to Traore, who crossed. Great header from N'Kolo. That was 2-0 inside 18 minutes, and we made it 3 on 33 minutes. Busquets, deflected shot into the back of the net, 3-0. And then just after half-time, Santos made it 4. We were in dreamland, but Inter Milan had slightly different ideas. They got 2 late goals in this first leg, a lovely finish from Coop Miners, and then a Lautaro Martinez goal right at the death to create a slight seed of doubt in our minds. We'd need to keep it together at the San Siro, and after Inter Milan took the lead in the 6th minute with this great finish from Vignato, I was getting a little bit worried. We did though restore our cushion with this penalty from Hamash before once again being pegged back by Inter Milan as Vignato scored his second of the night. At this stage, it was 5-4 to us on aggregate, and then we got a breakthrough. A brilliant finish from N'Kolo, who had come to life at the end of this season, made it 6-4, and then Inter Milan made it a little bit more nervous with a great finish from Lautaro Martinez, but it was enough. A 3-2 loss on the night gave us a 6-5 aggregate win, and we were going to the Champions League final. And so, it all came down to this. Real Madrid away from home and PSG in the Champions League final a week later. We would win the league if we could get a draw against Real Madrid. Because of our superior head-to-head, because we beat Real Madrid earlier in the season, we would be champions if we could secure a draw. Madrid, though, would win the league if they beat us, and they had home advantage. And so here we go. Real Madrid away from home. Winner takes all. Our squad selection was pretty straightforward. We'd had some big losses to injury. Jordan Kololo, who had been a superstar in our midfield, was injured with a fractured lower arm. And perhaps our star striker, João Santos, was missing with sprained knee ligaments. Both of them would miss both of our crucial games. And so the 11 looked like this. In goal, James Agbo. Once talked about as somebody needing to be replaced, he'd actually made a lot of development and was definitely our number 1. At the back, Yorsi Farag and Patrick Pfeiffer on either side of our star centre-back, Ahmed Diallo.
At right back, Amara Traore, and at left back, Yaris Hamash. In the team purely for those set pieces, 19 free kick taking, he was a threat from dead ball situations. The midfield would be Busquets as the regista, and with the injured Nkololo, it would be Modou Tambadou who would come in as the segunda volante. Our strike force would be Jakalash to the right hand side, Afalabi to the left, and through the middle, Friday Eze, replacing the injured João Santos. The team was selected. It was time for our La Liga Judgment Day. The Madrid team was of course strong, led by manager Jurgen Klopp. This was the team that had pipped us to the title for so many seasons in a row. They'd play in a 4-3-3 system with Evan Nilsson as their main striker. We, of course, would line up in our familiar 5-2-3 spanner system, Friday Eze leading the line through the middle. The league table told the entire story, joint on points. Winner would take all in this game here. And it started off with, well, not much happening at all actually. A cagey affair in the opening minutes, despite the fact that a draw would actually suit us best. Eventually the first real chance did roll around, with Fabio Vieira attacking down Real Madrid's right hand side. Hamash nicked the ball away from him, but Vieira fought back to win it again. Tchouameni and Eder Militao then combined down the right-hand side. Militao whipping a cross in, a dangerous ball, which bobbled around, pinball in the box, before eventually, I don't know how exactly it ended up going in, but Evan Nilsson ran off, celebrating as Real Madrid took the lead at the Bernabeu. And it took us by shock. We didn't really create much after this. Our main chance, that shot, breezing over the top of the bar, and suddenly, time seemed to be ebbing away. As we went in at half-time, it was 1-0 Real Madrid, and they were well and truly in charge. And the pattern continued in the second half. Time was just ebbing away, with no real chances being created. I had to take off Aimé Diallo, who was struggling at the back, not his best performance by any stretch, and Friday Francis Eze was replaced by Jacobs in the attack. But still, no change. Time continued to tick away. As we went into the last 10 minutes, it was Real Madrid that looked like the most threatening team. This effort from just outside the box from Valverde, whistling past the post. Actually, the only time we really saw ourselves on the ball after this was as Afalabi was tripped by Valverde, with Valverde being swiftly booked. We headed into added time, and, well, nothing happened. Real Madrid had beaten us 1-0, and Real Madrid were La Liga champions. We could only stand and watch as once again the Real Madrid squad collected their medals and celebrated on their home turf, because just like all of those other seasons before, Real Madrid had won the league. And so it wasn't to be. Our 1-0 loss to Real Madrid meant that they won the league by 3 points, and once again we'd been pipped to the post by the absolute juggernaut that Real Madrid were. For us though, we need to dust ourselves down and be ready to go again, because in a week, we had a Champions League final to play. And so, it all came down to this. PSG Champions League final. Guess where it was being held? Yeah, the Bernabeu. Of course it was. The poetic narrative was not lost on me, and we'd go with the same team that we'd picked against Real Madrid. Those injuries were still there for Nkololo and Santos. So I had faith in the lads. Go and put things right where they went wrong in that Bernabeu game. Go and win us the Champions League. And here we go then. A frankly terrifying PSG team was all that was between us and Champions League glory. Mbappe and Yeremy Pino led their line, with Jamal Musiala just behind them. Yeah, that's terrifying. We, of course, were unchanged from the league title decider, which we ultimately lost in our 5-2-3 spanner system. As the atmosphere built, the nerves were certainly jangling for myself. It felt like this was the moment. It was now or it was never. And we started brilliantly. Hamash down the left-hand side, pinging a ball over the top for Friday Eze, who smashed it home inside the first 4 minutes. He struggled in our league title decider, but he'd already made an impact in the Champions League final. An unbelievable finish, and we led early. If I talked about being nervous early on, my nerves were completely fried after going 1-0 up, even as James Agbo came out and confidently claimed this corner from Mbappe.
as he gave the ball out wide to Hamash down the left-hand side, who had made such an impressive assist beforehand, gave the ball away cheaply, and PSG launched an attack of their own. Mbappe into Elise, in behind for Yeremy Pino, who went excruciatingly close, hitting the woodwork, but we survived. James Agbo, the keeper, was called into action straight away again afterwards though, as he acrobatically tipped this shot over. So many chances in just the opening 10 minutes. This one was going to be a rollercoaster ride, and we had to hold on. It was truly end-to-end stuff, as just 3 minutes later, PSG threatened again. Elise again through to Yeremy Pino, but Pfeiffer was there to clear. Straight up the other end like a basketball match we went. Eze towards Jakalash, who collected the ball and took it wide. Eventually the ball was played across by Bousquet, and Hamash picked it up before smashing the ball off the bar. The woodwork had been hit by both teams already, and we were inside the first 15 minutes of the match. And the lightning fast start did not stop there. We picked up a throw-in down the right-hand side taken by Traore, and eventually a shot was taken by Bousquet, bouncing back perfectly, but Emmanuel Afolabi to tuck home into the open net. We were 2-0 up in the Champions League final. The rest of the half went by in a blur. Perhaps pure delirium due to the situation we'd found ourselves in. At half-time, we were 2-0 up. For 15 minutes after the break, we kept things tight. No chances created for either team until on the hour mark. As PSG looked to build an attack to try and get themselves back in the game, we managed to catch them in our press. Jakalash picking up the ball and feeding through Francis Friday Eze to slot home. But wait! The linesman's flag was up. We were going to a VAR call. And eventually, after what felt like ages, the decision was made. He was onside. We were 3-0 up in the Champions League final. Now, I'd love to say that I was completely calm at this point. We were cruising 3-0 in a Champions League final. But I still took the opportunity to instruct the lads to time waste as much as possible. I wasn't taking anything for granted. And perhaps that was the right call, or perhaps I invited pressure, because in the 80th minute, a sweeping move from PSG led to Hakimi smashing home and reducing the arrears. 10 minutes to hold on, and so I took off one of the strikers and brought on another midfielder, just hoping we'd make it through. And well, we did. We, UD Melilla, were champions of Europe. Champions of Europe with an entire squad made up of African players, no less. We'd done the impossible. 9 seasons in the making. We'd reached the very summit. We'd achieved all of our goals. We had done it. What a journey it had been. So many characters, so many heroes, and an incredible conclusion. Thank you so much for watching. I guess I'll see you in the next one.